Welcome to the Newsome MMA podcast, partnered with Heavy Duty Fight Management. I'm your host, as always, Newsome, with your co-host John, and tonight we're going to be breaking down UFC 237 from Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. John, how are you doing tonight, man?
How you doing? I'm very good, my friend. I'm looking forward to breaking down some fights. This card's an interesting card, man. I'm calling it the Legends card. Obviously pretty self-explanatory. You've got some big names in there: Anderson Silva, Jose Aldo, BJ Penn, all these guys fighting, man. And I'm just intrigued to see how it's going to go down.
Yeah, and the common theme for me for this card as well is the fighters that people think are washed up that aren't washed up, and there is one or two that definitely are, but we'll talk about that a little bit further down the line. But before we start, as always, thank you to all the listeners, followers and subscribers to the podcast. We have plenty of platforms where you can catch the show across YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, SoundCloud. So please subscribe to make sure that you never miss an episode. And with that said, let's break down some fights at UFC 237. We enter the Showtime Fights. The first Showtime fight tonight is in the main event of the evening. We've got the champion Rose Namajunas defending against Jessica Andrade. John, who have you got?
Yeah, how could we kick off the show without talking about the main event and the title fight? Obviously, the return of Rose Namajunas. She's been out of action for some time now, just over a year. When she fought Joanna Jędrzejczyk for the second time, winning that unanimous decision, which was a pretty close decision if people remember rightly. Rose started off very strongly. JJ came back into it as the fight wore on, but Rose did enough to edge that fight. Quite a lot of people I saw on social media thought Jędrzejczyk had done enough, but yeah, it was Rose that edged her out and got the victory. And I'm really intrigued to see how this fight plays out, because obviously it's the first fight at this weight class that we'll won't be seeing Jędrzejczyk, whether it's defending or trying to win the belt. So it's quite refreshing to see. To see two new people square off for the belt as well, and not just a standard fight. It is for the belt, and it's for me. I think this is going to go one of two ways. I think we're either going to see Rose Namajunas use her technical brilliance. Her striking has come on leaps and bounds as her time in the UFC has evolved. We saw her majority of her last fight against Jędrzejczyk outstrike one of the best strikers in that women's weight class probably the best striker that we've ever seen. And it's that technical footwork that does it, and obviously training with her partner. I don't know if they're married, partner Pat Barry. That is obviously going to help because he comes from an expert striking background. And yes, she has really come on leaps and bounds. We know that her bread and butter originally was her grappling. We've seen her utilise that, especially in the early stages of her UFC career. Wins over Angela Hill, Paige Van Zandt, etc. Wins on the Ultimate Fighter as well over Jojo Calderwood via Kimura, Randa Marcos via Kimura. Alex Chambers, rear naked choke. That was her bread and butter, but she's getting much better on the feet, and her technical striking, and like I say, her movement now and her footwork is really good, and it's top level stuff. But she's going up against a fearsome striker, probably the kind of complete opposite striker of Rose. Rose will use, like I say, her footwork, her range, long jab. She's long for the weight class. She's got height and reach advantage in this fight. But Andrade, I think it was Joe Rogan described it perfectly in the commentary booth for the last fight against Karolina Kowalkiewicz. She's like a mini Wanderlei Silva. I mean, she was just marching forward with them vicious hooks, and I don't think Karolina played a very smart game in that fight, because she was relatively static on the feet and kind of planting her feet and happy to exchange with Andrade. And I just don't think that's something that you can do against her, because she has genuine power at his weight class. Obviously, we know she came down from a class above previously. And yeah, I mean, it only takes one shot. How often do we see in this 115 pounds division? How often do we see someone get knocked out cold? And I mean, KK was she didn't know where she was. The lights were on, but no one was home after that fight. And it's going to be so fun to watch these two go to war. But ultimately, I'm picking the current defending champion Rose Namajunas to win this fight, and this is why I think she will use that technical striking. I think she'll be sensible first couple of rounds. Obviously, when Andrade is at her best and at her most powerful, although she does have cardio, she can go 5 rounds. We saw that against Jędrzejczyk herself when she fought for the title, but she definitely holds the most power in the first couple of rounds. Like I say, Rose Namajunas has got exceptional footwork. She's got the height, reach, length advantage. If she utilises the jab well, keeps at range, uses that footwork to cut angles, and as long as she doesn't back up in a straight line or just plant her feet the way that Kovalkiewicz was, and allowing Andrade to just land the barrage of 4 or 5 hooks, I think that Namajunas will be able to pick her apart on the feet for the first couple of rounds. I'm not sure whether we're going to see much action on the ground, because Andrade isn't bad herself on the ground. She's very well adapted to fighting on the ground, as is Namajunas. Maybe we'll see Namajunas just try and wear on her a little bit against the fence to tire her out. But I think ultimately this is going to be I think Rose Namajunas is going to just try and use technical striking to avoid Andrade's big shots. And if she does that, I think she'll be able to rack up plenty of rounds in the judges' eyes to take a decision. So I am going with Rose Namajunas to win this fight. I think she'll outstrike Andrade. I think she'll be able to counter regularly, keep her at bay with those wild hooks. And I'm saying, and still, Rose Namajunas to win this fight via decision.
Yeah, for me, man, this is a phenomenal fight. Like, it's just the perfect clash of styles that you can ask for in any fight. You've got Rose Namajunas, the current champion. She's tall, she's rangy. She comes from a karate and taekwondo background. She's a good scrambler. She's good off her back. And then on the opposite side of the cage, you've got the challenger, Jessica Andrade, who's like a little pit bull coming forward. She'll eat shots to come forward. She's got power. She's got wrestling. She's got a phenomenal heavy top game. She's strong, and she's the shorter fighter as well, so she's going to have to be the one that's closing the distance and pocket fighting. And man, it's just a perfect clash of styles, and I'm really looking forward to it. But listen, one lady's got to win, and I think the winner is going to be Jessica Andrade, and I'll tell you why. So the reason why I think Andrade is a bad stylistic fight for Rose. First of all, Rose has never fought anybody the style of Andrade, so this is going to be something new for her. She's never going to have been pressured like Andrade. She's never going to have fought a woman with the power of Andrade. I mean, even taking away the punches, the power, the blast doubles, the wrestling and the slams, it's just something that Rose is never going to have seen before. So I think if she's gonna win this, Rose is gonna win this fight. She's gonna have to adapt very quickly in the cage, because, like I say, she's gonna be in there with a fighter that has got a style she's never really seen before. But people keep talking about the range and the length of Rose, which is right. As a bit of a joke, I actually compared this fight a lot to Corey Sandhagen and John Lineker in a way. The key differences being, though, that Rose has, I think, got a more technically sound striking game opposed to Corey, whereas Andrade opposed to Lineker has got that wrestling threat. So in actual fact, stylistically, like I say, I think it's a better fight than the Corey and Lineker fight. But there's a lot of similarities. But the thing is with Rose, yes, she's got the length. Yes, she needs to keep distance. Yes, she's got good footwork as well. But what she has to be able to do is emulate the exact same game plan as Jędrzejczyk did when she fought Andrade, right? So when you go back to that fight and you look at Andrade and Jędrzejczyk, and I'm not mixing my words up here, right? I'm telling you, go back and watch that fight, because that is one of the most perfect performances I've ever seen out of a fighter in all of mixed martial arts. What Jędrzejczyk was able to do for 25 solid minutes against Andrade was just impeccable. She was striking, moving backwards. Yeah, she was getting, she got hit a couple of times. She had a bump on the head. This is a fucking face punching sport, man. You know what I mean? You're going to get hit in the face. But the game plan that she stuck to, and the fact that she was able to strike off the back foot so effectively pretty much the entire fight. The entire fight was pretty much Andrade just moving forward and looking to land the hard shots and looking to get a hold of her. And I'm telling you, I don't think that Rose can replicate that performance. Man, I think if you ran that fight back a month after with Joanna and Andrade, I don't think Joanna will have been able to emulate that performance. I just think it was that good of a performance against Andrade. So Rose has got to be able to emulate that performance to some degree, but I don't think that Rose's striking moving backwards is as effective as what Joanna's was in that fight, and this is key here because when you watch Rose striking, when there is times where she's moving backwards and she has to strike, but predominantly when she is moving backwards, she'll find an angle and an exit, and then she'll burst forward and strike. Right? That's not striking on the back foot, moving backwards. That's creating your angles and then going forwards in a burst to create the attack. Now, if she does that to Andrade, that's a mistake in my opinion, because she's going to be closing the distance for Andrade. Yes, she's going to be trying to look to get in and out very quickly, but ultimately that's going to benefit Andrade because she can then lay off, a very quick, powerful combination, or she can duck under, blast double, and try and take Rose down to the mat. So that sort of does play into her game plan. Now, from Andrade's perspective, she's got to be able to constantly close the distance, to constantly pressure Rose. But this is her style, and this is what she's going to do. She walks through strikes, which is, like I say, this is like the sort of comparisons to John Lineker, because Lineker will walk through strikes to land his own powerful combinations, and Andrade can do this for 25 minutes as well. So I don't think cardio is going to play a massive factor in this fight. Now, ultimately, it could be one of those fights, because it is going to be a close fight, Like I've already said, I am picking Andrade, but it is going to be a close fight. And it could almost be one of those fights where we go to the judges' scorecards and Rose has landed the more strikes, she's attempted the more strikes, she's landed the more strikes, popping a jab out there or a teep kick, something like that, just constantly accumulating minor volume. But Andrade is the one that, in the judges' eyes, is constantly the one moving forward, constantly being the aggressor, constantly landing the harder shots. And if there's close rounds during the 5-round period, and Andrade has landed 1 or 2 takedowns in a specific round or a number of rounds, the judges in those specific scenarios are constantly looking for something, some edge to give a fight. And we saw that last week with Brunson and Theodorou. Brunson won that fight with takedowns because the rounds were so close, especially that first round as well, was so close that the judges had to look for anything to give an edge to one of the fighters, and it was the takedown. So this is a massive opportunity for Andrade. She's got to be able to keep moving forward, to keep pressing Rose, to really put the volume on it and mix in her takedowns as well. And it's not going to be easy because Rose is a very good fighter. Like you say, she's got the footwork, she's got the movement, but I think to beat Andrade, you've got to emulate that Jędrzejczyk performance that she put on against Andrade. And the other side to that as well is you look at Andrade now compared to that fight, man, she's got so much better. I mean, before the Jędrzejczyk fight, she fought Angela Hill. Yes, she convincingly, decisively beat Angela Hill, but Angela Hill put on a pretty good fight herself in that fight. Andrade was hittable, and Andrade was getting tagged up. Then she fought Joanna. Joanna put on that stellar performance, but then since then, she went in the cage with Claudia Gadelha, nearly fucking killed her. Then she went in with Tisha Torres, was throwing her about as well. Then she went and knocked out, stone cold, one-bombed Karolina Kowalkiewicz. Man, like, this is not the same Jessica Andrade as what we saw against Joanna Jędrzejczyk. By far a better version. And like I say, a style that I don't think Rose has seen before. And I think she's going to be able to break Rose late in the fight. I think at some point the pressure, the constant pressure, the walking through shots, because that's another thing as well, just to quickly mention. With Rose, she tends to really surprise girls with the pop on a strike. So when they're coming forward, she'll pop out at them. It'll be a jab, or it'll be a 1-2, or it'll be a kick. And it'll really push her opponents back. And then that's when Rose can move forward. She's then got her opponent's respect. But with Andrade, she will walk through strikes. And I think this is going to be a little bit of a shock for Rose. The fact that she's going to be popping strikes out there. Like I've said, jabs, 1-2s, teeps, roundhouse kicks, front kicks. She's going to be popping strikes out, and I think Andrade is going to be eating them and carrying on moving forward. And then, like I say, it's going to be the pocket boxing. Rose can be pushed to the cage. She can be grounded on. I was listening to Liz Carmouche earlier on today talking about how surprised and how shocked that she was of how strong Andrade is. And this is coming from Liz Carmouche, who is also a very strong woman. So, yeah, I think it's going to be a close fight, but I think the stylistic edge is with Jessica Andrade. I think that she's got a ton of momentum going her way with the type of performances that she's been through. Yes, she eats shots. Yes, she's hittable, but the fact that she keeps on moving forward, coming through the shots to land her own attack, I think the pressure can break fighters. I think the style looks good in the judges' scorecards. Also, credit to Rose for taking this fight in Brazil as well, but I don't think that's going to do her any favours either. I've got Jessica Andrade to win. I think we see a new strawweight champion. I'm going to take her to win by decision. Now, in the next Showtime fight, we've got Jared Cannonier versus Anderson the Spider Silva. John, who have you got?
Yeah, straight in with the second fight, and we're picking the co-main event and the legend that is Anderson Silva. I mean, when this fight was announced, I thought it was a bit of a strange fight. I thought it could well be Anderson Silva's last fight in the UFC, and I don't know. I was, off the top of my head, who they could put him with, I'm not too sure. But I just thought, it seems a bit of a strange fight. I guess the UFC maybe thinks this is quite a winnable fight for Anderson Silva. But as we saw in Cannonier's last outing, he'll have a completely different plan in mind, because he put David Branch away with those heavy strikes. And it's crazy to think that Cannonier has come down from heavyweight. I mean, he's about 5'11", and he was fighting a few years ago. He was fighting at heavyweight against the likes of Sean Jordan and Cyril Asker, and then went down to light heavyweight, beat Cutelaba, lost to Glover Teixeira. Fought tough guys as well, man. Like, his losses in light heavyweight were Glover Teixeira, Jan Blachowicz, and Dominic Reyes. So they're all tough guys. And then, as we saw, he took on David Branch in his last fight, and he looked absolutely ripped at middleweight. He was looking an absolute beast. So it's going to be an interesting fight, because you never really know at this stage of Anderson Silva's career what kind of fight you're going to get. I mean, the Nick Diaz fight, I know that's going back a few years, but that was strange as hell. The Adesanya fight, the last fight, that kind of at times seemed a bit, I don't even know what the right word is. I don't know whether exhibition is the correct term to use, but they were kind of just like going through the motions, the two of them. It was really like, I was watching, I was like, this is a really strange fight just to watch. But
I think just quickly with that fight, I genuinely believe that it was and I said this before in the last podcast, I think, that we spoke with Adesanya and Gastelum.
Yes, yeah.
That fight, I think both of them just finally met a fighter in their careers that was the same as each other. And it was almost like they'd never seen it before, and it was, I know what you mean. It was strange, but I just think it was a style clash.
Yeah, well, it was weird, but yeah, you can look at Silva's record, and we spoke several times about this on the podcast where Derek Brunson's been involved. Brunson won that fight at UFC 208 as well. So in theory, Anderson Silva shouldn't have won a fight since Stephan Bonner back in 2012. But having said that, exclude the Chris Weidman fights.
They never happened.
They never happened. The Bisping fight was very close. It could have gone either way. The Daniel Cormier fight, I mean, he stepped in on, what was it, 2 days' notice, upper weight class against a guy who's a ridiculous wrestler and one of the best fighters of all time. And stylistically, that was a terrible matchup for him as well. We've mentioned the Derek Brunson fight. It was close, but Brunson won that fight. And then obviously he's gone up against Israel Adesanya, who's a beast as well, and who's the current interim champion. So he's fought against guys who are tough guys, and I mean, he hasn't, like I said, apart from the Weidman fights, he hasn't been stopped in any of those fights. So will Cannonier be able to stop him? I don't know. I think he stopped David Branch because he's cornerman actually in that fight against David Branch said that Branch has got 3 good takedowns in him, and then his gas tank is gone. And he was pretty much correct, because Branch was taking Cannonier down pretty easily in that first round. But then you notice we saw Branch start to tire at the end of that first round, and then when he came out for the second round, he looked like he was pretty much done. His cardio had gone, and then when he couldn't get the takedown and Cannonier hit him with a heavy shot, it was game over. So it's, for me, this is a really tough fight to call, because Cannonier in that first round against Branch didn't look great. Like I say, Branch's gas tank went, and Cannonier showed his power. Anderson Silva's hard to judge. He's hard to judge what kind of fight you're going to get. He had moments against Adesanya. I mean, he landed a few shots on Adesanya. Adesanya landed some shots on him and didn't put him away. I think Silva's still pretty durable. Like I said, he hasn't been put away, apart from the leg break we won't even count. The Weidman punches was him showboating and getting caught right on the end of the chin. He's very hard to put away. So I do think this is going to go to a decision, and it kind of just depends on Anderson Silva's output for me. Whether we see the Anderson Silva who just stands back against the cage and showboats, or whether we see the Anderson Silva who whether this be his last fight in Brazil, he really goes for it and puts on a striking clinic, because technically he's a far better striker than Jared Cannonier. I think Cannonier probably possesses the more power now, and probably stands a greater chance of finishing Anderson Silva than the other way around, in my opinion. But yeah, it's hard to say what kind of Anderson Silva we're going to get. But I'm going to go with Anderson Silva to win this fight. It's in Brazil if it goes to a decision. Not saying anything about the judges over in Brazil, but if it's close, I think they'll edge it towards the hometown fighter, with obviously the crowd and stuff on his side. It's quite easy to get swayed, whether it's conscious or unconscious bias. It is difficult when you've got all the home fans cheering for Silva. Like I say, technically he's the better striker. It'll be interesting to see if he does attempt any takedowns. I don't think he'll try and wrestle, but maybe off the clinch or anything like that, because like I say, Cannonier was taken down several times against Branch. But ultimately, I think Anderson Silva's going to win this fight, and I think he's going to win a decision. I think he's technically a better striker than Cannonier, and if his output is high, and I think he'll get the decision. So I'm going with Anderson Silva to win this fight via decision.
Yeah, man, I mean, at the start of the podcast, I mentioned that, I'm going to be talking a lot about fighters that people think are washed up that aren't. And this is the first one on the list. I genuinely don't think Anderson Silva is a washed up fighter. And, you said the exact points I was going to mention, John, in regards to the fact that he hasn't been stopped lately. The first sign of a decline is, being, your durability going, you're being rocked, you're being knocked out, you're really not looking yourself. Listen, Anderson Silva in his last fight, yes, Israel Adesanya was a little bit starstruck in my opinion, and the styles, like I've already mentioned during this breakdown as well, when I rudely interrupted you,
no problem at all.
was a clash of styles as well. So I do believe that there were some other issues in that Adesanya fight, but ultimately Adesanya is a beast, and the fact that he couldn't put Silva away, I think, speaks volumes. Derek Brunson, whether you believe he won or lost that fight, he holds power. He didn't knock Anderson Silva out. Daniel Cormier didn't knock Anderson Silva out. Michael Bisping didn't knock Anderson Silva out. Nick Diaz didn't knock Anderson Silva out. I don't know why anybody's been mentioning Chris Weidman fights, because I've never seen an Anderson Silva versus Chris Weidman fight. But moving on to Jared Cannonier, on the opposite side of the coin, a lot of people think that he's a little subpar as well, but look, when you go back to his record, he knocked David Branch out. That probably would have come a little bit sooner if he didn't have the wrestling to deal with. And then he lost to Dominic Reyes, which most of the division will lose to. He lost to Jan Blachowicz, which most of the division will lose to. He lost to Glover Teixeira, which most of the division will lose to. He's even got wins against Ion Cutelaba as well. Well, a win against Ion Cutelaba, who is also a powerhouse, so he dealt with him in the right way, and it's like it's a really, really close fight. And initially I was thinking when the fight got matched up, like, it was a bit weird, but when you actually look into it and really break it down, I think it's a really, really good fight and definitely worthy to be on the co-main event, because you're going to have Anderson Silva, that's by far the more superior striker, and then you're going to have a powerhouse in Cannonier that, as you've already mentioned, has fought a heavyweight, he's fought a light heavyweight, and now he's looking like an absolute shredded machine at middleweight. And it's like, he's going to be coming forward and he's going to be wanting to take Anderson Silva's head off. And, you know, if I was a betting man, which I am, I would bet that Jared Cannonier isn't going to be starstruck like Derek Brunson was. He's not going to be as starstruck as Israel Adesanya was. He's not going to give a fuck. He's going to go in there and he's going to want to take out Anderson Silva. He's going to want to put his chin in Rose Ed in his home country, and he will not care. And this is what makes it such an exciting fight. The way I see this fight going, though, is I see, like I've already mentioned, a defensive performance from Anderson Silva, just trying to constantly create the angles, the exits, and really bamboozle Jared Cannonier with his unorthodox movement and the ability to evade strikes. And I just think that if Cannonier doesn't knock him out in round one, Cannonier is going to be constantly chasing that knockout. He's going to be constantly thinking that he can put this dude away. Like I said, he's got this new shredded physique. He's come in there on his middleweight debut and knocked out Dave Branch, who was a big name in the middleweight division. And I think he's going to constantly be thinking to himself, I can take out this old dude in Anderson Silva. I can take him out. I can knock him out. And I think he'll be chasing this knockout, and just, I think the longer the fight goes on, the more desperate that Cannonier will become. But I think it'll be evident that he's quite desperate, and then Silva will just be popping the fundamentals out there, the teeps and the jabs, and just evading really well, getting the crowd on his side, and all these things being put together. And ultimately, I see it going to the scorecards as well. I just do not see Jared Cannonier winning a decision on the scorecards against Anderson Silva in the co-main event in Brazil. So I think Anderson Silva is actually going to be the rightful winner. I don't think it's going to be a robbery or anything like that, but I do think it's going to be a close fight, but a close fight that Anderson Silva is just going to edge because of how the fight could potentially be looking, with Silva potentially looking comfortable and Jared Cannonier potentially looking desperate. So I've got Anderson Silva to win this fight also, and I'm also going to take him to win via decision as well. Now, in the last Showtime fight of this podcast, we've got Antonio Rogerio Nogueira, Lil Nog for those that don't know, versus Ryan Spann. John, who have you got?
Yeah, we had to for this final showpiece fight, we had to do Lil Nog against Ryan Spann. We had to do old versus new. Another legend in a Nogueira brother fighting in Brazil. Could possibly be his last fight at 42 years old. We'll have to wait and see. And of course, he's coming into the fight off the back of a victory over Sam Alvey. I mean, when we broke down that card, I actually picked Sam Alvey to win that fight, and I have to admit, you picked it perfectly, my friend. You said that it's the perfect style for Nogueira. Alvey hasn't really got that high an output.
I have been called, John, the Sam Alvey whisperer. Someone really called me that on Twitter.
I like it.
Which is pretty funny because I've never lost a bet on a Sam Alvey fight.
I like it. Yeah, so it's a tough fight to call because after a pretty uneventful first round in that fight, Nogueira landed some heavy shots on Sam Alvey. We know Sam Alvey's pretty durable, and Nogueira just proved to us that despite being away since 2016, he still had power in his hands and his boxing was still pretty sharp. But going into this fight with Ryan Spann, this is interesting, really interesting, given the fact that Spann is just such a physical specimen. I mean, he's 6'5", long reach. He's a pretty strong guy, even though he's pretty lean. He's a strong guy. He's got dangerous. I mean, that choke over Emiliano Sordi in Dana White's Contender Series back in 2018, that was nasty. After just 26 seconds, Sordi was tapping for his life, and that choke had only been locked on for a few seconds. But It's really tough to see how this is going to go down because we saw a lot in Ryan Spann's last fight against Luis Enrique that he was throwing that 1-2 quite often. He was landing the snappy jab and he busted up Enrique's nose quite early, and he was landing a lot of 1-2s. But I did notice sometimes he was overextending a little, and Lil Nog was catching Sam Alvey with very similar, the jab and the overhand. Obviously, he's a southpaw, and he was catching with the jab and the overhand quite often. So it could be a battle of the 1-2s going into this fight. But Spann has that much longer reach, and I think he does utilise the teep and the push kick to maintain range, and I think he will be able to win this fight if he's sensible and he utilises that range. His output is going to be a lot more than Sam Alvey's output was against Lil Nog, and I think that's where the what cost me in my pick anyway, because as you broke it down perfectly, Sam Alvey just didn't have the output to trouble Lil Nog. Lil Nog could just go at his pace, which was a slow pace, especially in that first round, and then he still had the power in the second round. But he Spann's pressuring, landing shots from the outside, using that teep and the front kick. I think he can start to tire Lil Nog out. Obviously, we don't know what his gas tank's going to be like when he's pushed. We saw, as I mentioned, we saw that his last fight was back in 2016. So we don't know at the age of 42 whether he's going to be able to go 3 hard rounds. I mean, I'm not saying that Spann has the cardio of Khabib or anything like that, but yeah, his output is definitely a lot more than we'll see in the Sam Alvey fight. Ultimately, I think this is going to be another close fight. And I think it's going to be a fight that goes to the judge's decision again. I am going to go, however, on this occasion with Ryan Spann. I think he will be the more active of the two. I think he will be the more aggressive. I think he will land the more shots on the outside. Like I say, he has to be careful with that boxing though, not to overcommit and get inside on Lil Nog's boxing range, because as I mentioned, he can put you away. He's still got power, as we saw in the Sam Alvey fight. But if Spann plays it pretty sensibly and yeah, he utilises those front kicks, does enough to put a pace on Lil Nog, but not overcommit and risk getting caught with the boxing. Then I think he can that he can get a decision. And as we mentioned, it'll have to be a clear enough decision in Nogueira's home country to get the nod in the judges' eyes. But I think he will be able to do that. So I'm going with Ryan Spann to win this fight, and I have got him to win via decision.
Yeah, I think you broke the fight down perfectly, man, and I agree with a lot of the points that you've made. From Nogueira's point of view, that was a perfect stylistic fight for him to come into against Sam Alvey, especially after the layoff. And the reason why it was a perfect stylistic fight for him is because any fight where Nogueira can be the one that sets the pace, where Nogueira can be the one that negates the like I say, the pace of the fight and the volume, is going to be a fight where he's likely going to win because he has got a very good technical boxing background. And Sam Alvey was never going to be the type of fighter that's going to start blasting doubles at him and try and take him down to the mat. He's no Ryan Bader in that respect too. I mentioned Ryan Bader because that seemed to be his Achilles heel in MMA, where he really struggled against Bader in those fights. So with Ryan Spann, though, it's a completely different fight than what Sam Alvey was. Spann's going to be, Spann's going to have more volume than Alvey, definitely. He's going to be the one that won't mind going first as well, whereas Alvey's more of a counter striker. Again, that favours Nogueira. And Spann's going to be the one that's more aggressive, and he's just a better athlete, and I think he's going to be more durable as well. He's a much younger guy, and like I say, I think the volume's going to be more with Spann. I think that he's going to be the one that goes first the majority of the time. This should push Nogueira back, and then at this point, if Spann's the one pushing Nogueira back, hitting him with the 1-2s from just that little bit further out than what Nogueira's going to be hitting with, I think that Spann at that point will only have to really be concerned about a big counterpunch coming in from Nogueira, because at this point Nogueira will be winging the counter bomb to really just try and land something on Spann to get his respect. And I think that's crucial from Nogueira's point of view in this fight as well. He has to get, if he's going to have any chance of winning this fight, he has to get Spann's respect early on. Now, you can go into the jiu-jitsu of Nogueira. Obviously, we all know the Nogueira name. He's a third-degree black belt in Brazilian jiu-jitsu. I personally don't think that he's anywhere near as good as his brother on the mat, and especially on his back as well. Bethe managed to nullify him, and this is actually where Ryan Spann is best. His ground game is the best part of his game. You know, even if he's taken down, we saw against Luis Enrique, he was able to reverse positions. He was able to get top control himself. He does still look a little green. He was making a few little mistakes that was allowing Enrique to get back up to his feet, and opposed to just being able to keep him down and really solidify the rounds. But this is part of his progression and his development as a young fighter, and he's at Fortis MMA as well. So he's surrounded by a lot of good guys. He is going to be making those improvements. He is going to be making those developments, and I just think this fight is actually really tailor-made to Ryan Spann, going out there and looking great. You know, like you've already mentioned, the taller, the longer guy. I think he's definitely going to have more power than Nogueira. He's going to be more durable. He's the better athlete. I think his cardio will also surpass Nogueira's, because I do believe Nogueira will be on the back foot, expending extra cardio than what he's used to, especially now he's getting on a bit in the years as well. I just think Ryan Spann will be stylistically a much tougher fight for him than Alvian. I just think maybe too much on the night. I think, you know, I know Ryan Spann's only got 3 knockouts out of 15 wins, but I do think that he's going to knock Nogueira out. I think after a few 1-2s and he's put a little bit of pressure on him, at some point, I just think that Nogueira's chin's going to give way. So I'm actually going to pick Ryan Spann to win, and I'm going to pick him to win via knockout. And we move on to the parlay piece. The parlay piece is back. And the first parlay piece of this card is in the Irene Aldana versus Bethe Correia fight. This is a really good parlay. This is one of my favourite parlays. For me, Aldana, she's aggressive. She's a tough fighter. She will constantly be coming forward. She'll constantly be pressuring. She's tall. She's big. She's strong. And her overall ability inside the cage, you know, people question it. Sometimes it's too wild, sometimes she gets hit too much, but for every one that she gets hit, she doesn't mind giving one or two back. You know, sometimes these exciting fighters are exciting for a reason, and like I say, it's because you'll take one to give one back, and it's what we all love to see. And listen, if you haven't seen that Aldana and Pudilova fight, go back on Fight Pass and watch that fight, because it'll be one of the best. It'll be one of the. I was about to say it'll be one of the best women's fights you'll ever see, but it will be one of the best fights you'll ever see. Man, I can just remember being on the edge of my seat, big smile on my face, thinking, "What the fuck is happening? This is insane." And that's exactly what it was. It was just an insane fight. But listen, the reason why I'm so high on her in this fight is because, well, not just because of her abilities, but I'm just not sold on Bethe Correia at all. She's 35 years old, so she's piling on the years for the weight division, and she hasn't fought since 2017. That brutal knockout from Holly Holm, you know, it didn't have to be brutal. She sort of got knocked down, and she was like a rabbit in the headlights with her hands up, like, okay, I might be done, and the referee didn't stop it, and then bang, Holm finished her off while she was on the floor. It was brutal. Rightfully so that she's probably taken this amount of time to come back, but like I say, 35 years old, she's 10-3. You know, the fighters that she's lost to, prime Ronda Rousey, Raquel Pennington, Holly Holm, you know, they weren't bad losses. Marion Renault, I believe that she should have lost that fight, so the draw against her, I think, was more of an advantage to her. But like I say, I don't know what Bethe Correia can offer in this fight to really trouble Aldana. I think Aldana's fought much better women and fared better against them as well. She's got wins over Lucy Pudilova. Again, that was a razor close fight that could have gone any way, but Pudilova's tough as fuck and will come forwards as well. Talita Bernardo, who's also on this card, is also a very good prospect in this division. And then she's got 2 losses before that. Caitlin Chookagian, Leslie Smith. Leslie Smith was a war. That was a UFC debut as well. I just feel that she's just faced much, much tougher competition. And I don't think Bethe Correia can knock her out. I don't think that she can submit her. And for a start, she's got to take her down and keep her down anyway, which many fighters have struggled with. She's actually got really good takedown defense, Aldana has. And I don't think that she can outpoint her. I think that when she comes forward, she's just going to be hit by a barrage of strikes and met in the middle, fire versus fire. I think Aldana's going to be pushing her back with strikes. I think that after the first maybe half a round, maybe going into the second round, I think Bethe Correia will be thinking, shit, right, okay, she's really tagging me up. I'm going to try and having to start shooting on her. But then it's like hitting a brick wall when you're trying to take Aldana out. You talk to Talita Bernardo, who's a good takedown artist, and you ask her how difficult it was to take Aldana down. She'll tell you that. I don't think Bethe Correia can take her down. And at that point, I hate to say it, and I really do hate to say it with fighters, with any fighters at any level, but I do think she's going to mentally break inside the cage as the fight goes on. I think Aldana's going to pour it on her, and I think she's going to knock her out. So I've got Irene Aldana to win. I'm going to take her to win by knockout. John, who have you got?
Yeah, I'm going to keep this pretty short and sweet after your breakdown. I'm going with Aldana to win this fight as well. I was really impressed with that last fight against Pudilova, which you've already mentioned, was one hell of a fight. I had the pleasure of watching that back only today, and it was still edge of your seat stuff when you watch it back second time. They were just two fighters just completely going at it. But yeah, she showed some good footwork on the feet, some good movement, some good head movement. She had a really good low kick that she kept connecting with Pudilova. She's happy to stand and trade as well if she's not using that footwork. I mean, she doesn't just rely on that. She's got no objection to getting in a firefight. She's hard to take down, and Bethe Correia is one of these fighters. I keep using this term now. I think this is my new term. Is a bit of a technical brawler. She tries to make fights scrappy and ugly, and I just don't think. And she tries to bully her opponents. So I just don't think she'll be able to do this against Aldana. I just think Aldana's technically sounder. She's not afraid to fight fire with fire and stand in the middle and trade. And yeah, like you said, when Correia stands there and they're both exchanging shots and she's getting caught, she's probably thinking, well, there goes my initial game plan to try and bully her. So what am I going to do from here? And yeah, I think it's going to be a pretty rough night for Correia. As you mentioned, we haven't seen her since that brutal knockout to Holly Holm as well, where she was almost put her arms up begging for mercy before that final blow landed. And yeah, the only win she's got, I know she's fought some top level competition, Holly Holm, Raquel Pennington, Ronda Rousey, like you've mentioned, but win over Jessica Eye. We all know Jessica Eye isn't really suited to the weight class, and she was undersized for the weight class. So she got that draw against Renault, like you said. So you're going back then to Shayna Baszler back in 2014 for her next win. And when you look at some of those wins on her record, no offense to the ladies, but Jessamine Duke, Shayna Baszler, people like that. I mean, when she's come up against anyone who's technically pretty sound, she struggled, and I think that's going to be the case again. And I also think that Aldana's going to put her away later on. I think it's going to be second or third round, but I just think it'll get to a point where she's landing multiple shots, and Correia kind of just wilts and covers up, and the ref has seen enough and jumps in to intervene. But yeah, I've got Aldana to win this fight via knockout as well.
And the next parlay piece is BJ Penn versus Clay Guida. Now, man, again, this is going to look like a really obvious parlay for the night, and it's actually one that when I first saw both of these fights on the card, and I was initially thinking, okay, this is going to be my parlay as long as it's playable. So roughly before I break this fight down, I'll talk a little bit about the odds. So roughly wherever you get this bet, there's different odds at different places, and especially with it being a parlay, you've got two sets of betting lines to deal with. You're going to be looking at anywhere between, I think, minus 140 and minus 180 with this parlay. And even if you're on the minus 180 scale, I still think there's a lot of value in that line with this parlay, because yes, you've got two legs, you need two fighters to win, and at minus 180 people might think, oh, that's a little bit too high for two fighters to win. But listen, I can't see either Aldana or Clay Guida busting this parlay. And like I said, even at minus 180, you've got a 55% return on investment at that line. So I think a 55% return on investment is great. It's a 64% probability of winning, which is also great. And like I say, I just think it's a really good parlay. And listen, when you're looking at BJ Penn for the other side of this parlay, he hasn't won in 7 fights. One of them was a draw against John Fitch. That was 7 fights ago. And then he's lost 6 on the bounce. And it's really not looking great for him, especially when you consider that his last win was 9 years ago against Matt Hughes in 2010. That's an extraordinary amount of time without a win in mixed martial arts. I don't know why he's still competing. So at the beginning of the podcast, I talked about fighters that people thought were washed up, that weren't washed up. Well, this is actually an exception to that clause, because BJ Penn, in my opinion, is definitely washed up. I don't know what more he's got to give to the sport. He's not durable. His cardio is just looking horrific. I don't really know what his style is anymore. He comes out to strike, but then he has got that black belt in jiu-jitsu. But he doesn't really look to take the fight to the mat. He just seems, again, and I hate to say it, he just seems like a bit of a punching bag at this point in his career. And it's horrible to say, because he was one of the all-time lightweight greats. Fought for the welterweight title as well. But against Clay Guida, I've got no idea why he's taking this fight, because Clay Guida is everything that BJ Penn does not need right now. Clay Guida, he's on a bit of a resurgence himself. I know he's coming into this fight off the loss against Charles Oliveira, but listen, his weakness and deficiency has always been the submission defense, and Charles Oliveira is one of the best submission artists, so 2 and 2 make 4. But before that, knocked out Joe Lawson. Before that, beat Eric Koch in a fight that everyone was writing Guida off. Apart from me, by the way. I fucking picked Guida in that fight. It's like a plus 300 underdog or something like that. And before those fights, yeah, he was looking to be on a bit of a skid, basically. And he came into the Eric Koch fight, and that was when his resurgence started. He started to look a lot better. Like I say, pace, power, speed, movement, good takedown defense. He's strong. He's always going to have that deficiency in the submission game. And listen, this is mixed martial arts. If BJ Penn wins anyway outside of some weird injury inside the cage or DQ or something like that, it's going to be a submission. But getting Guida down and actually submitting him in 2019 for BJ Penn again is very unlikely. Like I say, I don't see how he wins this fight. I don't see how the parlay busts. I think Guida's going to knock BJ Penn out. I think Aldana's going to knock Bethe Correia out. I think it's a solid parlay. John, I'm sure you agree. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, again, very short and sweet with this one. It is just a... Yeah, as you said, I don't know why BJ Penn is still fighting, to be honest. As you said, it's sad, but you described it perfectly. It just seems like he's a bit of a punch bag now, and with every loss that comes, it just gets just looks worse and worse. And obviously, we saw him get finished with that nasty heel hook against Ryan Hall in his last fight, and add to that as well, there's all the talk of the problems outside of the octagon as well, whether that'll have any impact. I mean, we see stories. I don't want to. This isn't a gossip podcast, but we see stories of he spends a lot of his time drinking and things like that in between fights, and getting pretty out of shape, and to go up against a guy like Clay Guida, who's got a relentless gas tank, he's not a very good place to be in. And yeah, I can't see anything other than another loss for BJ Penn, another finish. I think Guida's going to just come out there with his aggressive style. If you remember back to, I know he lost against Charles Oliveira, but he beat Lozon Eric Koch before that. And then the Ortega fight as well, who's winning that Ortega fight until right at the end of the last round, 20 seconds left in round 3, and Ortega threw that knee up and finished him. But I don't think BJ Penn has got anything that will that he'll be able to use to finish Guida. I don't think he's got the power in his hands anymore. Obviously, he was a very good submission artist back in the day, but I just... If Guida lands a few strikes and they're standing for a couple of minutes, then the fight goes to the mat. I just don't think BJ Penn has the energy or the cardio to even attempt to lock on a submission to try and finish Guida, unless he finishes it very early on with the submission. I just don't see a way that he's going to do that either. So, I'm going with Clay Guida just to put on a relentless pace from the very start. Maybe take obviously his bread and butter is taking his opponent down and landing that ground and pound, whether he finishes it on the feet or whether he takes BJ Penn down early and just lands heavy shots. BJ Penn curls away and Guida keeps raining down the shots to the fight's finished. But I just don't see anything other than a Clay Guida stoppage, and I think it's going to be early again. I think it's going to be round 1, so I'm going with Clay Guida to win this fight via knockout in round 1.
Now it's time for the dogfight. Now we're 3-0 on the dogfights. We're looking to go 4-0 with this event. And we believe the best underdog of this card is in the Jose Aldo and Alexander Volkanovski fight. So obviously, if you've seen the lines, you know which one's the underdog, where the plus money is. That's Alexander Volkanovski. Now, to some people, this may come as a bit of a shock. To others, it may not, especially with myself personally putting quite a lot of money on Renato Moicano to beat Jose Aldo. Now, I don't regret making that bet. I also, I just want to clarify the whole fighters that people think are washed up scenario that I keep talking about throughout the podcast. I don't think Jose Aldo is washed up. I do think he's still got a lot there. But yeah, I don't regret the Moicano bet. What I do regret is the line that I took him at, and that's the only issue I've got with that. Moicano won that first round, man, and he won it with a really educated, a really disciplined and calm first round. But then he got some really bad advice in his corner, and I was actually sat with my mate at the time, and I turned around to him and I said, I don't agree with that at all, and he agreed with me. And basically what his corner said to Moicano is, look, now you've got his respect, now he's felt your power, now you've took round 1, now it's time to go in and really start scrapping with him. And I was thinking, well, fuck, that's the last thing Moicano wants to do after he's just spent 5 minutes perfecting a great game plan. And he went in there and he listened to his corner and he started scrapping, and he ended up getting finished. And it was really sad and unfortunate, but it just shows that Jose Aldo isn't washed up. He has still got it. That was a knockout off the back of another TKO against Jeremy Stevens, who's notoriously tough to put away. So he's on back-to-back wins now, and he's looking again like Max Holloway could have just been his kryptonite. But here's the key thing: I don't think Max Holloway specifically was Jose Aldo's kryptonite. I think Aldo's kryptonite is fighters that won't go away and fighters that will put pace and pressure on him. And that is exactly what Volkanovski is. That's his entire game. He's got pace. He's a pressure wrestler. Reminds me a lot of how Merab Dvalishvili fights and fought last week, I don't know if Volkanovski's going to have a lot of success with his wrestling in this fight. First and foremost, Aldo has got really good takedown defense. In fact, I can't really remember the last time he was taken down, to be honest. But the fact that Volkanovski will not go away, he's tough, he's durable, he's got an iron chin, he'll keep moving forward, he'll keep coming back at you. It's going to make Aldo move backwards. And when you move backwards, you expend more energy. Aldo, I think, is going to get caught with quite a few shots on the cage. Aldo is a lot like Renan Barão in that respect, in the fact that he doesn't really tire through a high pace necessarily. It's more towards tiring when he's taking too many shots, and we saw that in the Max Holloway fight. Max Holloway wasn't really putting a massive pace on him in regards to the speed of the fight, but he was just popping the shots out there, and the more Aldo was wearing him, the more his cardio wore down. But Volkanovski, like I say, he's not going to go away. He's going to be constantly coming at Aldo. And I think Volkanovski might even drop round one in this fight because Aldo is still quick, he is still sharp, he has still got combinations, he is still quite aggressive. Do you know what? It wouldn't actually surprise me if he even dropped Volkanovski in that first round, but it's going to be tough because Volkanovski also covers up well. He's a smart fighter. He reads the shots coming towards him really, really well. He covers up at the right time. You'll never catch him with his hands unnecessarily low. You'll never catch him lazy. His fundamentals are there, his defensive fundamentals, which is key in this fight. And I just think he's going to put a pace and pressure on Jose Aldo that's going to eventually break him. And, I said similar things with the Andrade and Namajunas breakdown earlier on. The pace and pressure that these little pit bulls in the cage put on their opponents breaks fighters. And I'm not disrespecting their opponents. It's just it's a fact. When these guys just keep coming at you, or girls keep coming at you, coming forward, piling volume, winging bombs, pushing you back against the cage, making you move backwards, making you strike backwards, making you having to look for your own exits and angles out of the pocket boxing, and then them coming at you again after you've created that angle and exited out. Honestly, it will drive any fighter insane having to deal with that type of opponent, and that's what Alex Volkanovski is. Alex Volkanovski is not as technical, is not the superior striker in this fight, but it's just, like I say, stylistically, I just think it's a bit of a nightmare for Aldo because he got Moicano out of there. He got Jeremy Stevens out of there. I don't think he's going to get Volkanovski out of there. I think he's just going to, like I keep repeating myself, he's going to keep coming forward. He's going to land volume on him. He's going to tire him out. And I actually think Volkanovski is going to knock him out late in the fight. He hits hard. This is something I've not even mentioned about Volkanovski yet. The dude's got fucking power in both hands. He put Chad Mendes away in his last fight. Like I say, I think once Aldo's a little bit worn down, and once Volkanovski's got him pinned up with his back against the cage and he's winging shots at him, body ahead, I'm just mixing it up. I think it's going to really hurt Jose Aldo. And the last thing to mention before I pass this over to you, John, is Jose Aldo nearly had to pull out of this fight a couple of months ago. I believe he was wrestling, he shot a double leg, and he split his knee open or something along them sort of lines, and he got infected, and he had to go in hospital for a couple of days while they was monitoring him and seeing how bad the infection was. And he was being interviewed in Brazil and just basically saying that he's not 100% sure this fight will even go forward. So he could potentially be carrying a slight knee injury into this fight as well. And I just think that, like I mentioned right at the start of this breakdown, my one mistake that I made with the Moicano prediction, and obviously I bet Moicano, is the fact that I took it at the line that I took it at, which was minus 150. So I faded Aldo for minus money, and I don't think, looking back in hindsight, that was the smartest move. But obviously hindsight's 2020. It's a beautiful thing. But the plus money on Volkanovski in this fight, with all the stylistic reasons that I've mentioned, I think he's the best underdog on the card. John, what's your thoughts?
I'm gonna lay this out straight away to anybody listening. This section is the underdog, and we're picking who we think is the best underdog on this card. And yeah, I agree that Volkanovski is the best underdog on this card. Having said that, though, I am picking Jose Aldo in this fight. I'm extremely on the fence about this fight, and I have one asterisk slightly leaning more towards Aldo's side than Volkanovski. That's how close this fight is for me, and that is why I when we were picking the best underdog, Volkanovski's name straight away was the one we picked, because he can quite easily win this fight. And you've mentioned many of the points, but I'll just echo a few of them. He's got that relentless gas tank. He's got relentless wrestling. He's a pressure fighter. He's got good shelves up defensively well as well when he's defending strikes. We saw that against Chad Mendes. He can take a shot. Chad Mendes dropped him, and then he kind of just got back up and was smiling at him. He scrambles back to his feet if he does get taken down. Not that I think that Aldo will shoot for many takedowns, but he scrambled back to his feet against Mendes, who's a good heavy top pressure guy. and yeah, he's got power in his hand, so he's got all the tools to be able to beat Jose Aldo. But having said that, for me, Aldo is just a different beast, and we've seen 3-round Aldo as well, and we know how much we like to see 3-round Aldo, and we mentioned this in the Jeremy Stephens and the Moicano fight. We know that Holloway defeated Aldo in round 3 of both of their contests, but there's a different mindset if you're going into a fight and it's 5 rounds and 3 rounds. If you're under a bit of pressure in round 3 of a 5-round fight, and then that fight, i.e. Max Holloway, starts wearing it on you, you know that you've still got 2 rounds left after that. And if you're nearly done, you're nearly done, and there's no way out of that. But if it's a 3-round fight and you get to that last minute and your opponent's really wearing on you, the legs have gone, the gas tank's failing, you know that you only have to hold out for 1 more minute of that fight, and you get on that back burner, or you try and clinch up against the fence and just hold on to your opponent for dear life and see out that round. And I think it's going to play out similarly to how you said. You said that you think Volkanovski will possibly finish Aldo in the later round 3, and that is entirely possible. But I think that Aldo will win rounds 1 and 2. I think he's a far more technical striker. We've seen he's got, I think it's a 92% takedown defense in the UFC. He's very hard to take down. He's come up against guys similar to Volkanovski before, i.e. Frankie Edgar, Chad Mendes. Lamas is a great wrestler. Kenny Florian. He's fought all these guys before. Manny Gamburian. They're all good, very high level wrestlers. Maybe some of them not quite as relentless as Volkanovski, but they are all very good wrestlers, and he has had no problems with those guys. He defends takedowns impeccably. Now, the one worry is getting backed up against the fence and Volkanovski landing heavy shots and just tiring him for the entirety of the 3 rounds. But I believe that you said it as well. Aldo is the superior striker. Technically, he's very sound. How's Volkanovski going to fare when Aldo lands some of those signature leg kicks? We don't know. When Aldo's cutting those angles, they're mixing up to the body, landing that body kick, landing the stiff jab, and moving in and out of range, utilising his footwork. It's a different beast to that Chad Mendes fight. And Let's just go back to Volkanovski's record while he's been in the UFC, and you can only beat who he's put in front of you. I'm not denying that but he's got wins over guys like Mizuto Hirota, Shane Young, Jeremy Kennedy, Darren Elkins, and then most recently Chad Mendes. I mean, when you look at the comparables with who Aldo's been fighting, he's been fighting absolute beast level competition compared to who Volkanovski's fought. And although Mendes in his last fight was by far the most difficult challenge, that was a Mendes who we'd only seen half a round for several years. Obviously, he'd just come back off that USADA ban. And Chad Mendes, in that fight, we saw similarities to the Chad Mendes that fought Conor McGregor. I know that was on short notice, but Mendes had a very good round 1. He took Volkanovski down a couple of times, albeit Volkanovski got back to his feet. He was having some success on the. He was pretty even on the feet, but they both had some success. Chad Mendes then hurt Volkanovski in the second round. He's winning that second round up until the point he hurt him, and then it all seemed to go south very quickly for Chad Mendes because. He didn't really seem to. Obviously, we see sometimes fighters blow their gas tank when they have their opponent rocked and they swing wildly for the finish. But Mendes didn't really do that. I mean, he swung a couple of heavy shots and tried to land a couple of heavy shots. But as soon as Volkanovski was back to his feet and kind of smiled back at him, it just showed Chad Mendes just broke from that point, and his gas tank went from looking good to pretty much completely empty. And then Volkanovski started teeing off on him and got the finish. But yeah, Chad Mendes had some success standing against Volkanovski. He stuffed the takedowns. He landed some of his own takedowns against Volkanovski. And Mendes' style standing is all power. Everything he throws is with 100% power. So you can understand why his gas tank went in the second round. But yeah, For me, I do think Aldo is going to be able to edge this. I think he's going to win rounds 1 and 2 with his superior striking. I do think the Volkanovski pressure will eventually lead to Volkanovski coming on strong in round 3, but I think it will be too little too late. And I am going with Jose Aldo to edge this fight via decision. But as is, like I said at the very start of this breakdown, this is the underdog section, and I can quite easily see Volkanovski winning this fight. I mean, if he has some success in round 1 with a couple of the takedowns and with some of those heavy strikes, then yeah, he could quite easily run away with this fight. And he could, if he can take Aldo down without much difficulty, or he gets him down regularly, then yeah, this is going to be one hell of a long 3 rounds for Jose Aldo against a guy like Volkanovski, and I could quite easily see Volkanovski getting the win. But yeah, for my pick, I am picking Jose Aldo to win this fight. I am going with him to win a decision, but as I said, it's that one ass cheek is just slightly leaning further onto Jose Aldo's side of the fence than it is to Volkanovski's. It is a real toss-up between the two, but I'm going with Jose Aldo, but yeah, Volkanovski for me is the pick for underdog, because he could quite easily come out of this fight with a victory.
And with the breakdowns complete, we'll now enter the quick fire round. And first up is Thiago Alves versus Laureano Staropoli. John, who have you got?
Yeah, another veteran of the sport, Thiago Alves, fighting a relative newcomer. He's obviously fought once before in the UFC in Staropoli, but yeah, Thiago Alves, you've mentioned it a few times on this card about guys who they're past their best, or guys who've still got something to offer. Alves does have something slightly to offer, but yeah, let's face it, he didn't win that last fight against Max Griffin. That was a robbery. Max Griffin should have come out of that fight with a win. Then he lost to Kunchenko and Curtis Millender in his 2 fights prior to that. Staropoli, still, we need to see more of him. He fought against Hector Aldana in his UFC debut, won a unanimous decision, hurt Aldana with some heavy shots. He was wild. He was throwing heavy hooks, heavy bombs. He throws in combinations. He throws a jumping switch kick. He spinning back fists. He's a wild guy. And again, it sounds a common thing for this fight, but it's quite a tough one to call, because initially I thought Thiago Alves, he's well and truly done. Staropoli's going to win this fight, but Alves can stay in there. We saw that against Kunchenko. He stayed in there against Griffin and got the decision win. I know he got finished by Millender, but he's still pretty hard to put away. And whether Staropoli is going to do that, I don't think so. So if it goes to the judges in Brazil, we saw Alves' last fight, he got the win. It could go either way. Thiago Alves could catch Staropoli with while Staropoli's coming in with one of those wild combinations I just mentioned. He leaves himself open to be countered. Aldana countered him a few times, but ultimately I think Staropoli's going to win this fight. I think his output will be higher. I think he'll be able to land on Alves. Alves is not the guy we've seen from a few years ago. And yeah, I just think his outcome's going to be his output's going to be too much for Alves, and I do actually think he's going to finish him late on. If he can catch him with one of those flurries and hurt him, then I think he's just going to be relentless with the strikes until Alves is put away. So I'm going with Staropoli to win this fight via stoppage from strikes in round 3.
Yeah, Staropoli was one of the fighters that I faded quite heavily when he came in. You know, against Hector Aldana, it was more on what I'd seen of Staropoli in tape, and he didn't strike me as a fighter that was really that good at all, if I'm being honest, from what I'd seen of him. But he came in on his UFC debut and he put on an absolute clinic. He looked like he'd improved a ton. He's a young kid, and the development was certainly there. He really brought that fight to Aldana. So now you've got this young stud that's potentially looking really great, that's probably developed even more since we last seen him coming into the cage against Thiago Alves, who is a veteran and who isn't totally washed up yet, but is on, he is showing signs of serious decline with durability and output, and just generally looking quite worn each time that he steps in the cage now. But the issue I've still got with this fight is Staropoli looked great against Hector Aldana, and Hector Aldana is absolutely not Thiago Alves. And Thiago Alves is, like I've already mentioned, is a vet of this game. He's clever, he's savvy, he's gonna have every trick up his sleeve. He's gonna know every trick in the book of how to really nullify these young studs that are aggressive, that come forward and throw combinations. And this is what Staropoli is about, and he's also durable as well. But I just think that the fight's going to hit the scorecards, and I think it's going to be another really close fight. I think that Thiago Alves is just going to do enough to edge on the judges' scorecards in regards to volume. I think he's going to have some moments in the fight where it's going to be it's going to be really worrying for him because of like I said, the aggression and combinations that Staropoli throws. But ultimately, I think the veteran's going to win this fight, and I'm going Thiago Alves to win. I'm going to take him to win by decision. Now, in the next quick-fire fight, we've got Francisco Trinaldo versus Diego Ferreira. John, who have you got?
Yeah, this I think is going to be a really fun fight. We almost picked this for one of the Showtime fights, and it's I think this is going to be a good brawl between two tough guys. Again, the common theme, it's a really close fight. I mean, Ferreira is getting better and better on the feet all the time. We saw that with wins over Jared Gordon, Carl Nelson, Rustam Khabilov. And when you look at the guys he's lost against recently, his only two losses, it's against Dustin Poirier and Bernard Dariush, who are two top level guys, and he's going up against a guy in Trinaldo who is, even at 40 years old, he's dangerous on the feet. He throws with power. He mixes his strikes up nicely. Obviously, we saw that in the Evan Dunham fight with that vicious knee to the liver as Dunham was stepping in. His losses are against top guys in James Vick and Kevin Lee recently. Before that, you're going back to 2014. Losses against Michael Chiesa. Originally, my pick for this fight was Francisco Trinaldo. However, having watched some tape and things like that, Ferreira's striking has really improved. I think he may be able to land. He's obviously a very decorated jiu-jitsu practitioner as well. We already know that. That's his bread and butter, but he's striking. He's getting better and better. And I have edged towards Ferreira in this fight. I do think he'll be able to stand with Trinaldo, whether he's able to land a couple of takedowns throughout the fight as well, which will just add more clout to his side of things in the judges' eyes, and yeah, I think it's going to be very, very close. I think they're both going to land on the feet. Trinaldo does tend to counter strike better, as I mentioned, against Dunham, and he throws those counter shots with power. So there's every possibility that he could possibly hurt Ferreira, but he himself is hard to put away. Only Dustin Poirier has done it, and yeah, I just think Ferreira's output, the fact that he may be able to take Trinaldo down and have a little bit of success on the ground, even if it's only briefly before Trinaldo gets back to his feet. I just think that Ferreira is going to slightly edge this fight. Again, I think it's going to be another fight that goes to the judges' scorecards. But yeah, Ferreira to get the win for me by decision.
Yeah, I'm going the other way in this one. Obviously, we know about Ferreira. He's a third-degree black belt in jiu-jitsu. That's where he really shines. But the problem that Ferreira has is his output in wrestling. So his takedowns. He doesn't really search for takedowns, not anywhere near as much as he should anyway. And I think that's actually really detrimental to his style, because he should be like how Damian Maia fights now. Damian Maia tried working on his boxing and it did get better, but he got to a point in his career where he's like, fuck it, I'm just going to take the dude down. What's the point in trying to strike when my total advantage is on the ground? And it's very similar to Diego Ferreira, but he's been working on, it's sort of actually similar to the path that the development path Damian Maia took as well, because now Diego Ferreira, Fortis MMA, he's working on his striking, his boxing is looking a lot better. But Diego Ferreira has problems against southpaw fighters predominantly. So with Francisco Trinaldo being a southpaw fighter, he's also definitely the more decorated striker. He's a black belt in kickboxing under Master Andrade, and he likes using heavy kicks and heavy overhands, and I think that's what's going to win him this fight. I think the kicks from Trinaldo are going to come up and down the open body, because obviously Ferreira's an orthodox fighter, so that body is going to be open to the kicks. And I think every time Ferreira is going to try and catch an angle and come forward with some strikes, with some boxing combinations, I think he's going to be met with a kick to the leg, a kick to the body, potential head kick, and then following these kicks, Trinaldo throws big overhands as well, and I just think the combination of the two together is really going to keep Ferreira at distance, and it's really going to make him struggle to close the distance on Trinaldo and really start landing on him. Francisco Trinaldo is just a different beast in Brazil. He's a totally different fighter, it seems, when we've seen him outside of Brazil. I think stylistically it's a good fight for Trinaldo to win, and I think he's going to win on the scorecards. The next quick fire fight is Thiago Moises versus Kurt Holobaugh. John, who have you got?
Yeah, we both picked Thiago Moises, if I remember rightly, in his UFC debut against Bernard Dariush, and the exact thing happened that that we were worried was going to happen, and that was just Dariush sticking to him like glue, pressing him against the fence, and not giving him any space to strike or work his ground game, which is well adapted to both. He's got wins in his career via punches. That win over Gleison Cutis in Dana White's Contender Series was that head kick and follow-up strikes. And he's a guy that can win the fight anywhere, and he's going up against a tough guy in Holobaugh. I mean, it's going to be a very close fight again. I know he's lost his last couple of fights against Shane Burgos, but he rocked Burgos in that fight, landed heavy, and left himself vulnerable then to when he jumped into the guard and Burgos wrapped up an arm and got the arm bar. Then before that, he fought Barcelos and lost in the third round with that uppercut. And for me, I'm sticking my neck out again. I'm going with Moises. I mean, from what I've seen of him, he's only young, 24 years old. His striking's good. He's very well rounded. He's very dangerous on the ground. I mean, if you've seen some of his wins before, go and look at a winner RFA 35 in the main event against Dave Castillo. He wins via a superb helicopter armbar. I mean, he's a very dangerous guy wherever the fight goes, and yeah, I just think he's going to have too much for Holobaugh. I think he'll be able to take Holobaugh down and have some top time. I think on the feet they'll be pretty average, both pretty average, and they may cancel each other out. I think Moises may have a slight advantage, but yeah, maybe Holobaugh has a slight power advantage in his hands, but it is very close. But yeah, I think Moises is going to win this fight, and I think he's going to get a submission in one of the later rounds, either round 2 or round 3. I think he's eventually going to be able to get the fight to the mat. He's very dangerous on the ground, as I already mentioned. And yeah, I think he's going to lock on a submission, and I think he's going to put Holobaugh away. So I'm going with Thiago Moises to win this fight via submission.
Yeah, man, I love helicopter arm bars for sure. We've only ever seen a few of them, but yeah, I like Thiago Moises in this fight as well. I've seen a lot of love for Kurt Holobaugh, and I really don't understand it personally. I think that it's a great stylistic fight for Moises. He's not going to get stuck to like glue like in the Dariush fight. He's not going to get grinded on, and even in that Dariush fight, we saw slight glimpses of how hard and how accurate that Moises strikes, and like you said, he's also got a good ground game as well. I think it's a bad stylistic fight for Holobaugh. I think outside of Holobaugh landing a killer shot with his hands, I think Moises will be able to really win this fight wherever he wants to. So I think on the feet is more fluid. He mixes in kicks, and this is important. If Moises is or does want to keep this fight standing, and that's his game plan, he has to kick, because if he uses just his hands only, he is going to run way more of a risk of being caught by a bomb from Holobaugh, which could put him or any other man out for that matter. So Moises has got to mix in with his kicks, but he does that anyway. I think it's a part of his striking game. So I think on the feet is more fluid. He's got more tools in his arsenal to use, and then, like we've mentioned, on the ground, you know, he can get a fighter down to the mat, and his submission game is good, his grappling is good, and that's ultimately where I think he'll win this fight. I do think he's going to start the fight striking, as all fights start anyway, stood up, but I do think he's going to have an extended period of time striking. I think at some point he might feel the power of Holobaugh. I think he might feel the aggression of Holobaugh as well, and I think from that moment he might start looking to try and get the fight to the mat. I do think he does get the fight to the mat at some point in this fight. I think he's going to take Holobaugh's back, and I think he's going to choke him out. So I've also got Thiago Moises to win via submission. Now, in the next quick fire fight, we've got the newcomer Luana Carolina versus Priscila Cachoeira. John, who have you got?
Yeah, this fight I think is going to be sloppy. I think it's going to be a sloppy stand-up battle between the two. They're both, from what I've seen of Luana Carolina, they both got quite similar styles in their striking. They'll just march forward, just walking forward, throwing 3 or 4 alternating jabs and straights, and then back out and repeat the process. I mean, Cachoeira, we've seen her a couple of times in the UFC already. She got absolutely beaten to pieces against Valentina Shevchenko before being submitted in the second round, and then most recently she lost to Molly McCann. Pretty close fight. I mean, she obviously does possess some power in her hands because she broke McCann's eye socket, was it, if I remember rightly, or orbital bone, or obviously McCann had that horrendous eye injury. I think it was the eye socket, and was coming on strong in round 3 because obviously McCann couldn't see, and on another day the doctor could quite easily have stopped that in the 3rd round because of that eye, and she could have the W next to her name. But yeah, it's going to be close. I mean, from what I've seen of Luana Carolina, like I say, she's very similar with the striking. For me, she just marches forward. She just throw in a few kicks. She's got quite a nice head kick that she was using in her Dana White Contender Series fight against Maybelline Lima. Lima took her down a few times in that fight. I know Carolina did reverse a couple of those takedowns and ended up in total control herself, but she was susceptible to being taken down, as was Cachoeira. She got taken down by Molly McCann, and that's not really Molly McCann's game. So, yeah, I just think it's going to be a pretty sloppy stand-up battle between the two. I'm going with Cachoeira to get her first UFC victory in this fight. She needs it. I mean, if she gets another loss, I think that is her time up in the UFC for now. She definitely needs it. We've kind of got a bit of a litmus test as to where she stands in the UFC because we've seen her a couple of times, whereas Carolina we don't really know, coming from the regional circuits, from Thunder Fights, and then she's been fighting on some of the regional scenes in Brazil, so we don't really know where she matches up against UFC level competition. But yeah, I'm going with Cachoeira to edge this fight. I think it's going to be another decision, but yeah, I think Cachoeira is going to edge this, so I'm going with Priscila Cachoeira to win by decision.
Yeah, I'm going the other way in this fight, and I'm going to take the debutant Luana Carolina. I think that the styles, like you said, they both come forward, they both like to strike, and you know, it's not the most crisp boxing you'll ever see, but, you know, it's effective. Obviously, look at what Cachoeira did to Molly McCann's eye, as you've already mentioned. Luana, she looks like the much thicker opponent. She looks like she's got some really heavy kicks as well. And this is ultimately why I'm picking her to win, because I think the kicks are going to play a part in this fight. If Cachoeira can't close the distance and she can't land punches inside the pocket, then I really don't see how she wins this fight at all, because that's a game. You know, she comes forward, she strikes with 1-2s and combinations and just basically looking to put her hands on her opponent's face. But if the kicks are coming in from Luana, then that could really slow the forward momentum of Cachoeira. It could really keep her on the back foot, and then Luana can then move forward with her own strikes, using her own hands. And again, if it gets a little bit tough, she can resort back to those kicks and really look to be aggressive in that respect. And I ultimately think that's what's going to happen in this fight. I think that Luana's going to make it a very, very difficult fight for Cachoeira in regards to Cachoeira being able to close the distance and actually land. I think it's going to be a performance that's going to frustrate Cachoeira, and I think Luana Carolina is going to grab the first win in the UFC, and I think she's going to get it done by decision as well. Now, in the next quick-fire fight, we've got a really good one here. We've got Wally Alves versus Sergio Moraes. John, who have you got?
Again, like a broken record, this is a really tough fight to pick, and it's a really close fight. I know we both talked about this fight before the breakdown as potentially one of the fights we could talk about in more detail for one of those segments, but it wasn't to be. But yeah, I picked initially. My initial lean was Wally Alves. I've watched some tape, and it's really up in the air for me. It could go either way. I'm still going to stick with that original pick of Wally Alves. Purely due to the fact that on the feet, I think he'll land the heavier shots than Sergio Moraes. I mean, Moraes doesn't really put people away. When you look at his wins, Ben Saunders won via arm triangle choke, but Ben Saunders is well and truly done now. Tim Means was a close split decision. Davey Hamos was a decision. Zach Otto was a decision, and then you're going back to then he drew against Luan Chagas, and then you're going back to Amari Akhmedov that he won via strikes in 2015. I mean, his bread and butter is on the ground. He's a very, very decorated jiu-jitsu practitioner. The issue for Alves is if he tires and Moraes can get him to the mat and have some top control and spend some time on the top, or even if you're just wearing against him on the fence and Alves tires, and then we've seen what can happen in those kinds of fights. But the fight with James Krause was the only fight in his career that he's been finished. His only other losses have come to now champion Kamaru Usman via decision and Brian Barberena, who is extremely tough. And yeah, it's a really close fight. I mean, the one thing that Alves does have as well is that nasty guillotine. We saw that against Colby Covington, Nordine Taleb, Marcio Alexandra Jr. All these fights he won via guillotine. So if Moraes leaves that neck out there while he's shooting for the takedown, I know that I mentioned his grappling credentials, but if he leaves a neck out there and they're still pretty dry and Alves can lock it in, he can finish guillotines. We've seen that before. But yeah, I'm just going with Alves to slightly edge his fight. Like I said, I think he's a slightly better striker, lands with more power, looks better in the judge's eyes. Again, I think it's going to go to a decision. As you can see, I think this is going to be a decision-heavy card. But yeah, I'm going with Wally Alves to just edge his fight and win via decision.
Yeah, I mean, we're looking to potentially put this fight on the dogfight segment of the podcast, and I don't understand why Sergio Moraes is an underdog in this fight, because Wally Alves is predominantly a kickboxer with, like you've said, a nasty guillotine. You know, the guillotine is his defense mechanism to keep his fight stood on the feet, but I don't think he's that great of a kickboxer, and that's his predominant style. Yes, he's got power. Yes, he's got combinations specifically early on in the fights, but his volume isn't always there. He does tend to stop and stare a little bit during moments of each round. His gas tank is suspect. We've seen that so many times before. Admittedly, that was when he seems to exert a little bit too much energy early on in the fights, but Moraes can stand man, and I think Moraes has actually fought better strikers and fared better against them than Wally Alves. I thought, and even though this is a fight I think that Moraes did actually lose, I think Tim Means is a better striker than Wally Alves. And I also think Anthony Rocco Martin is a better striker than Wally Alves as well. And I know he lost that fight and it was decisive, but I just think that Moraes has been in there with better strikers. He's been in there with fighters with more volume. He's been in there with fighters that are better movers, better counter strikers. And I actually think that Moraes can hold his own on the feet. And then if he goes to the mat, yes, he does have to be careful of the neck, but I don't see a high-level jiu-jitsu fighter like Moraes getting caught in a guillotine, even if it is locked up. We saw how Jacare got out of the guillotine of Jacamanson that was catching everybody. When you get to this level of jiu-jitsu where you're fighting a serious credentialed Brazilian jiu-jitsu artist, they find ways to get out of even the best chokes. So I don't see Moraes getting caught by a choke, but if he wants to take the fight to the mat, I think he can have a lot of success there. But I think the fight, and it's just weird looking back on tape at specific matchups and things like that, I think this fight is going to play out a lot like the Sergio Moraes and Davey Hamos fight. I think it's going to predominantly take place on the feet. I think Moraes is actually going to get the better of the kickboxer and Wally Alves on the feet. And I also think it's going to go to a decision. So I'm going to take Sergio Moraes to win. I'm going to take him to win via decision. Now, in the next quickfire fight, we've got Talita Bernardo versus, again, the newcomer, Melissa Gatto. John, who have you got?
Yeah, interesting fight with the newcomer Melissa Gatto coming in. As I mentioned to you today, my UFC Fight Pass actually broke when I was trying to watch some tape of Talita Bernardo. But we know her bread and butter really is on the ground. She takes her opponents down. I mean, she landed takedowns against Sarah Moras in her last fight, and against Aldana and Renault, the two fights that she lost prior to that. And the Renault fight, she was winning up until 6 seconds left in the round, and Renault pulled out the bag. And Aldana, we've mentioned her already today, and how we rate her pretty highly. So don't read too much into those losses of Bernardo. And like I say, she beat Sarah Moras in her last fight via decision. From what I've seen of Melissa Gatto, she's predominantly a submission girl. She's got the majority of her wins via submission. Kimura's armbars. So if Bernardo is going to utilise the game plan of taking her opponent down, she'll have to be wary of leaving an arm out there or anything like that, because Gatto does look like she can snatch them up. But I'm going to be picking Bernardo in this fight again, similar to my breakdown of one of the earlier fights. Just the fact that the Cachoeira fight, the fact that we've seen her in the UFC, we kind of know her level. Gatto is a bit of an unknown quantity, and when you look at the competition she's coming up from, I mean they're very, they look very, very regional promotions in Brazil, and so it's really hard to gauge the level of competition. I mean, her opponents' records aren't bad, but again, we don't really know the level that her opponents have been fighting at as well. But yeah, she's young. She's only 23. She's got plenty of time to improve. She does get the loss in this fight, and she could surprise me and come out and get the win. But from what I've seen of the tape that I've seen of her, I just think Bernardo's going to be able to have some significant top time. As long as she avoids those submission attempts on Gatto, I think Bernardo is going to get this win. Common theme of the night, decision. But yeah, I'm going with Talita Bernardo to win this fight via decision.
Yeah, Talita Bernardo is a -400, -450 favourite for a reason, man. And I do think that line is about right as well. I don't think it's steep. I like Talita Bernardo. I think she's a solid fighter. She's got good wrestling. She's got a heavy top game. And she was having a lot of success against Marion Renault as well, which, when you're having a lot of success against Marion Renault on the mat, then, you can probably class that fighter as a legitimate grappler. Melissa Gatto, on the opposite side, she looks like she gets taken down quite easily. She does have submissions off. Well, she throws up submissions off her back, so the traditional arm bars and the triangles and, those types of submissions that are getting flung in from guard. But like I say, the fact that she gets taken down quite easily, Bernardo can pass very comfortably as well. Like I said, she's a good grappler, so if she does get takedowns, which I definitely believe she will, I think if she does land in the guard of Gatto, I think she'll just pass guard, and that'll nullify the takedown. Sorry, the submission threat from bottom, and then, like I say, she can just do what she wants on top, because from there I don't see Gatto sweeping or really causing Bernardo too many issues. And I think at some point in the fight she's going to get submitted. I think that Bernardo is just going to be rolling all over her, and it'll just get too much for Gatto. UFC debut against a really legitimate grappler, so I've got Talita Bernardo to win. I think she's going to win via submission. Now, in the last quick fire fight, and we've put it last because, again, it's a short notice fight. As we always mention every week, when there's a short notice fight, we never really know where it's going to get put in the order of the card. So we've got Raoni Barcelos versus Carlos Joaquin Quiros. John, who have you got?
Yeah, obviously this was meant to be Barcelos fighting against Saidna Magomedov, which is a fight. Yeah, man, that was going to be one hell of a fight. I was really looking forward to seeing that. But fair play to Carlos Quiros for stepping in. Means we still get to see Barcelos on this card. But yeah, Barcelos is a massive favourite in this fight, and I think it's justified. And I'm going to keep this pretty short and sweet. And I will be picking him to win this fight. I mean, he's dangerous wherever the fight goes. He's got heavy top pressure. We saw that against Chris Gutierrez in his last fight. before he locked on that rear naked choke, and the transition speed for that rear naked choke as well. Because Gutierrez had really cut Barcelos from the bottom with an elbow, and Barcelos was bleeding everywhere. And if it had gone to the end of the round, there's a chance that the doctors could have come in and had a look at that cut because it was nasty. But Barcelos was bided his time and then transitioned to the neck really quickly and got that finish. And fight prior to that, he beat Kurt Holobaugh, who's also fighting in his card. Round 3 uppercut. He holds his power into the later rounds. We've seen him beat Dan Moret in RFA, who via knockout as well, who's now in the UFC. Bobby Moffett as well, he's got a win over. And I think his level's quite high. He's got he's pretty well rounded. He's got power in his hands. He can finish people, and we saw he's dangerous on the mat and can have some heavy top time as well. And I think Carlos Queiroz is going to find this difficult. I mean, I haven't seen a great deal of him. He has got a lot of finishes on his record as well. He does have power in his hands, especially early in round 1. He's got, when you look at a lot of his fights, they all finish in pretty much all finish in round 1 via strikes. So and again, at only 22 years old, he's going to come in and he's got nothing to lose. And sometimes they're the worst fights for guys. But yeah, I just think Barcelos' experience and his superior class is going to show through in this fight. And I think Carlos Queiroz has got some way to go before he's on the same kind of level as Barcelos. But I think Barcelos will finish his fight. I think he'll weather the storm early in round 1. Possibly take the fight to the mat again and look to work his submission game, because I don't think he'll want to stand and trade with a guy who's got so many first round finishes via strikes on his record. So I wouldn't be surprised if Barcelos takes this down and tries to work his submission game, which I think ultimately he will succeed in. So I'm going with Barcelos to win this fight via submission in round 2.
Yeah, it's such a shame we never got the Barcelos and Said fight, because in my opinion, I think that was the best match fight on the entire card. You know, I was so intrigued to watch the styles clash in that fight. But listen, we've got Barcelos versus Queiroz now, and like you've mentioned, props to Queiroz for stepping up. But Barcelos is touching -700 favourite now, and I do think it's for a reason. But then on the other side of the coin, the reason Queiroz has got so many first round knockouts is because he's a fucking madman and he's nuts as well. This fight is going to be crazy. Like when these guys get going, they're both gonna wing bombs, and Queiroz definitely does not mind taking 1, 2, or 3 to just to land fucking one himself, or a combination himself. He's that type of fighter, so he's an exciting fighter. I think he's going to be an exciting addition to the UFC, but I don't think he gets it done against Raoni Barcelos, because if Barcelos doesn't get what he wants inside of these wild exchanges, then he's got a plan B of just level changing and taking his opponents down to the mat. He's got really, really good level changes, really good entries, really good takedowns, and he's got a really crushing top game as well. So like I say, he's also a really good striker, power in both hands, good combinations. Raoni Barcelos is a very experienced guy. He's definitely one to watch for the future, and he's definitely got a plan A and he's definitely got a plan B. For that reason, I can't look past him in this fight. I think he's going to finish Queiroz via knockout, so I've got Raoni Barcelos to win. I'm going to take him to win by knockout. And that's it for this week's podcast, guys. So, John, before we hit the Newsome MMA mentions, what do you need to mention, man?
Yeah, just as always, check out all the work that I'm putting out there on Newsome MMA. Got some great stuff out there, not just by myself. That would be very egotistical of me saying some great stuff by me. Fantastic team. Obviously, you're not subscribed to the YouTube channel. Make sure you do, man, because we get some real good interviews with some real good guys on there. And check that out. And as always, just hit me up on Twitter at MMA and me. Always happy to talk fights with everyone. And look forward to chatting to all you guys and just talking all things MMA. So hit me up. I'll follow you back and we can get talking about this beautiful sport.
Awesome. Now for the Newsome MMA mentions. First of all, I want to mention the Newsome MMA website. Don't forget to visit the website at newsomemma.co.uk, where you'll find my MMA betting section, which will provide written betting advice for 2 or 3 of the fights that were in the quickfire round. You'll also find the locally famous tape index feature, prediction videos, fighter interviews, and the content collaboration with Heavy Duty Fight Management too. And you can even request colour commentary and media coverage from Newsome MMA as well. The next mention is a long-term sponsor of Newsome MMA, CBD Life UK. CBD is an amazing product and something that I use myself. Thousands of professional athletes also use CBD too. And at CBD Life UK, they've got a wide variety of products to suit the needs of any customer. You can go to cbdlifeuk.com and use promo code Newsome MMA to also get 15% off your order. And the final mention is to our newest sponsor of Newsome MMA, Golden Ticket Fight Promotions. Golden Ticket put on some fantastic MMA shows and are one of the biggest regional promotions in the Midlands over here in the UK. The next event is GTFP 12 at the Hangar Events venue in Wolverhampton on May 18th. Tickets are on sale right now, and you can also follow them on all of their social channels, Facebook, Instagram and Twitter, to keep up to date with everything at Golden Ticket. That's it from us, guys. Enjoy the fights on Saturday night, and we'll see you next week.